All right. Welcome to the 30-Minute Hour. It's the weekly podcast where we discuss business, sports, politics, and whatever's on our mind. I'm your host, Eric Twiggs, your procrastination prevention partner. Joining me as always is my partner in crime. You know him as the super CEO, the business strategist extraordinaire, and all-around good guy, Ted Fells.
I just wanted to smile. Good evening, all.
Good evening. All
You
right.
like my back? My back.
Yeah, I'm saying you're looking all official there. We got the whole CNN newsroom
Breaking
type
news.
feel. That's right.
Breaking news. That's what they say always on CNN. Breaking news.
And I am impressed by the fact that you stepped up your virtual game there. That's good. Always evolving and innovating here on the 30-Minute Hour podcast.
Thank you.
As you can see, we've got a guest we'll introduce her here shortly. But please know, and you'll find out soon, this is not your everyday podcast.
No,
it's not. You can go to the 30minutehour.net website and check out our previous episodes, our YouTube videos. You can go to the Facebook Live page right here, where many of you are watching us right now, and check out this video and the videos from the past. But again, this is clearly not your everyday podcast. And Ted, I tell you what, in the What Now movement, things are moving.
Oh yeah.
And I'm telling you, we're seeing these inspirational videos. You know, today we had Kim LaMontagne. You know, she was talking about mental health. It was outstanding. Mm-hmm. Tomorrow we have Barrett Matthews. He's going to be talking about productivity and different productivity hacks, how you can get more done with less effort. Every day at 12 noon, you need to go to the What Now movement group. Check it out. Get your source of inspiration. Become inspired. Take your game to the next level. Ted, any thoughts on that?
Well, at 12 o'clock, just bring your sandwich, your soup, your salad, whatever, and just get access to some good content while you're having lunch.
Absolutely. It would definitely help you to move, for sure. That's what it's called, the What Now movement. I mean, you will definitely feel inspired to take that next step and move forward toward your goals and dreams. So again, if you're watching, please feel free to type in the comment section. You can say hello. You can ask questions as we move forward. But we want to be able to interact and chat with you as we go on this journey. Ted?
You have something on your mind.
So Ted, let me explain to you how this works. So like when I call you, when I call your name, this is the part of the show where you say, yes, Eric, what is it?
Okay, let's try.
It's like a back and forth dialogue thing we have happening here on the show. I know we've only done 62 episodes together, but I figure, I want you to kind of know how this thing flows. Can we try this again, or?
Okay, let's try it again. It's been a long day, Eric.
Right, I get it. Yeah, let's try this again.
All right.
Ted?
Yes, Eric.
I've got something on my mind.
Please, Eric, share.
Yeah, that's much better. Okay, so in honor of our guest today, who we're going to introduce here in a few minutes, I want to talk about the biggest barrier to leading with empathy. Like what keeps us from really leading with empathy? Why doesn't it happen like it should? I guess she talks about leading and she talks about empathy. So this is a good time for us to talk about this. So as I was thinking about this question, I came across something. So John Maxwell has a great leadership book. I think everybody needs to check it out. It's called The 5 Levels of Leadership by John Maxwell. Certainly need to check it out. It's a great read. But he writes about this young lawyer, and it's like chapter 2 of the book. He's talking about this young lawyer. His name is Herb. He's new to the legal profession. In an effort to get up to speed, young Herb, he's studying these 2 experienced attorneys. to see what he can learn from them, right? He's studying both of them. He's looking at their style to see like what specifically can he emulate. So the first attorney displays like this dominant, aggressive style. He's always interrupting with objections. He's confrontational. He's getting into arguments with the witnesses. He's very demanding when he's communicating with the jury. So then you have the second attorney. He's like the total opposite. Lawyer number 2, he's quiet. He's reserved. He just pauses and listens a lot. He rarely interrupts with any objections. He's always very polite and respectful.
Sounds a lot like me, Eric.
Oh yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking too there, Ted.
Okay.
Yeah, but never raised his voice when he's making an argument. So the question is, which of the 2 attorneys would you say is more effective?
Of the 2, the one that I would think the second attorney.
You said the second one. So interesting thing, most people think the first attorney, right? But here's what they found, that they both were equally effective. Like both of these attorneys won 90% of the cases that they tried.
Okay.
Yeah. And so my takeaway from that, it kind of gets into the biggest barrier that I see when it comes to leading with empathy. It's believing that you need an outgoing approach to get outstanding results.
Okay.
I think that keeps people from leading with empathy. You feel like you've got to be General Patton. You've got to be Vince Lombardi yelling at people and throwing out 4-letter words. But it doesn't take that. And to me, and again, I'd love to get our guest take on this. I think that listening is the most underrated and undervalued skill when it comes to leading people. Like if you sat someone down and you said, okay, what do you need to be a good leader? You're going to think, oh, I need this presence. I need to be able to communicate. But you don't think about, I need to really be able to listen to understand. And I think that's a critical thing, because it's impossible to empathize. And I need to practice this. Here's just one little tool that I think can help. I think we need to practice the 20-80 rule of communication.
Okay.
And I'm saying this because sometimes I need this, right? So during your next one-on-one meeting, let's say you're sitting down with an employee, you're discussing something with that person, someone that you're supervising, you've got responsibility for, you're in a leadership role, focus on talking 20% of the time and listening 80%. I mean, I need to work on that. And I'm telling you, like I've tried this as I was interviewing people for various teams that I lead. And you'd be surprised some of the things they tell you when you just sit back and listen.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just think that's the key. Any thoughts on that, Ted, before I bring on our guest of the hour?
Well, I think listening is always good, right? Because I mean, if you don't listen, then you kind of go into every situation coming out with what you already knew, right? It's just your own perspective on something. And maybe some information and that's shared that can help you to be able to I guess to communicate better with whoever it is you're communicating with, whether that's an employee or a client or partner. So yeah. Absolutely. Listening is key.
Listening.
That's why we have 2 ears, right? 1 mouth, right?
Yeah, we have 2 ears and only 1 mouth.
Yeah.
Yep, that is the reason. Well, good. So now we're ready to bring on our guest. She did an outstanding job at the What Now Movement Virtual Summit, talking about leading with empathy. I'm glad I didn't have to follow her on the program. I would have like, man, I'm in big trouble. But she did an awesome job. She's a published author, an industry leader with a unique combination of interpersonal communication skills and partnership development with a focus on education and social impact. In her 18 years of professional experience, she's worked at Johns Hopkins, Bayview Medical Center and their psychiatric rehabilitation program. She's taught for 5 years in the Baltimore City public school system. She's facilitated business development initiatives for the Kaplan Test Prep, Capella University, and NYU Langone Health. Joining the Cognito team in March of 2019, she serves as the Regional Director of Education Partnerships, overseeing clients in both PK-12 and higher education. She is somebody.
She is definitely somebody.
And she's right here. Please join me in welcoming to the 30-minute hour, Dawn Marie Bornheimer.
Welcome. Hey guys, welcome. How are you?
Welcome.
Fantastic.
Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. It is an honor and a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you.
So let's get at it. I know we'll talk about your kind of early educational career and everything else first. I just wanted to get your thoughts on what we talked about a little earlier, as far as just some of the barriers that keeps people from leading with empathy. What do you see that keeps people from being more empathetic?
Well, I think it's a couple of things. I think we have to be willing to see, oftentimes we are far more similar than we are different. We have to be willing to ask thoughtful questions and reserve judgment while doing so. And so by asking questions, you start to learn and understand somebody's experience from their perspective. It's not about what I think you might be feeling. It's about how are you feeling in this moment? Because my response to the same situation could be vastly different. So it's taking the time to understand, asking, and truly listening while reserving that judgment so that the person can feel more comfortable, perhaps with being more vulnerable about what they're truly feeling and experiencing. And then ultimately, as a leader, it's taking a line to action. So after learning and listening, what are you going to do with that information? And your opportunity to demonstrate your leadership follows that conversation oftentimes. And so not only is it the ability to be empathetic in the moment, to be curious, to ask questions, to reserve judgment, to make shared decision-making, action steps perhaps with the person you're speaking with, but then ultimately delivering on those, which is going to improve your connection and your relationship.
Awesome. Excellent. Okay. So let's go back in time a little bit. So let's go back. What inspired you? I mean, you're a professional in the education field. What inspired you to pursue that as a career path?
Yeah, it's interesting. When I had gone to college, I had focused on psychology, which for a lot of people may be their default when they don't know what they wanted to do. But I truly did want to serve in that space. And I wanted to help kids that perhaps didn't have the most ideal home life, the kids that were misunderstood in school, had great potential, but perhaps were not always getting that level of encouragement or support. As an athlete, I was always connected to my coaches and my teachers and mentors, and I knew that there were always people that wanted to see the best for me. And so I had originally gone into that psychology field. Through my internships and my experiences, I became quickly aware that a lot of these kids that had experienced trauma had also were not necessarily thriving in school. And they were quite smart, but not quite getting the receipt and the support they needed in the schools. And so through my time at Johns Hopkins, which was where I interned and then was offered a full-time position, I came to realize that the average educator was not given this clinical background that I had. The average educator wasn't taught how to recognize signs of distress in a child and how to crosswalk that child to a safe professional within their building. Oftentimes those kids were disruptive or acting out, and it had everything to do with the way the teacher was engaging with them, but not intentionally triggering them, but triggering them nonetheless. Because in order to survive in that environment that was their home environment or their community, they were often in this fight or flight mode. And so I quickly became passionate about becoming their teacher, which is what brought me into Baltimore City Public Schools, and I've been close to education ever since.
Awesome. Awesome. And so when you were an undergraduate in college, did you know that you would be doing what you're doing now? Like, how clear was your vision at that time when you're on the college campus?
I always wanted to, I always had a connection with people. I was always very empathic. I was always able to like my emotional intelligence was always pretty high. And I always recognized things in other people far before other people would. So maybe perhaps as the two of you are friends, I would recognize that you were having a bad day before Ted would. And Ted be like, no, he's fine. And then I would ask you how you were doing. And you would tell me that there had been a death in your family the night before or something else had happened. And I was always able to pick up on those things from other people. So my ability to build connections was always a strong characteristic that I, then came to cultivate. But I would say in college, I very much thought I was going to go the clinical path. I was going to be a psychiatrist or a psychologist. I was going to serve in that capacity. And it just evolved after doing a few internships and starting to see the disconnect between the clinical work being done at Johns Hopkins and those children going to school every day.
Interesting. So what advice would you give to yourself if you could go back in time, knowing what you know now, go back to yourself when you were a sophomore in college? What advice would you give to yourself based on what you now know?
It's interesting. I think that my career has come full circle because I did everything in divine time. So I was meant to learn the lessons that I learned along the way in order to be the person that I am today. And so Lisa Nichols would say some of our greatest gifts come wrapped in sandpaper. And I think that there's this opportunity to take everything that we learn and grow from it. And so I think I had the jobs that I needed to have a greater appreciation and impact in the role I am in today. But I think my younger self, I would have just started focusing more on the inner work. I would have started paying more attention to who I wanted to be, what felt good or not good for me, what felt aligned or didn't feel aligned. And trusting my intuition a little bit more, trusting that it's okay to say no to certain things to make room for your yes. I think at one point I didn't always have an abundance mindset, and I would love for my 20-year-old self to have known that there is more than enough for everyone. And if you lead with a servant heart, you'd be surprised what shows up.
You just said something that was profound. I want to go back to that. There's a couple of things you said, but you said it's okay to say no to make room for your yes.
Yeah.
Can you expand on that?
Yeah. So I think oftentimes we are worried that the next opportunity or the next relationship or the next thing won't show up. So even if it doesn't feel like 100%, we're like, all right, well, it's what's here. It's kind of the opportunity in front of me. So like I'll use applying for a job as an example. I'm a firm believer that when I apply for a position, I am interviewing them as much as they are interviewing me. I do not know that I would have always felt that way. I would apply for a job, I'd put my resume in and I'd be like, I hope they like me. I hope they like me. I hope they pick me. And I would always feel this anxiety around, well, what if they don't like me? And at some point in my career, I crossed a barrier, perhaps an internal mindset barrier, where I just said, you know what? If it's for me, it will be for me. And if it's aligned, it will show itself. And if I leave that interview and I'm not excited about doing this work, it's okay, because interviewing is an experience in itself. Maybe I was meant to interview for that position to learn more about what I don't want instead of interviewing for that position and hoping that they like me. So I think one of the shifts I made in my career, which allowed me to start to be more selective, if you will, for my opportunities, was that I understood that every experience was meant to teach me something, but what I see as the goal might not be exactly what it is. So I'm not showing up to this interview hoping to get selected. I'm showing up to this interview to explore the opportunity to see if there is an alignment between what I bring to the table and what they are looking for.
That's interesting. I've seen a meme out there that says I never lose, I learn. Right. And that kind of sounds like what you're saying there, is that it's an opportunity to learn, even if that particular opportunity that you were interviewing for or whatever, going after, didn't happen.
Yeah, and I think you can use the analogy in relationships. People stay too long because they're worried there isn't going to be a better one.
Mm.
But then you get another relationship, you get into a second relationship and you're like, wow, this person's just like the last person and this is equally terrible. Well, guess what? You're the common denominator. So maybe you need to figure out what happened with you that made you show up twice in the same way and attract the same kind of person.
Right.
So
but
I think you have to kind of work through the analogies in different buckets, but I think what it comes down to is self-worth, right? And the worthiness and knowing who you are, knowing what you bring to the table, knowing what you bring to the room, knowing what you bring to the relationship. And then you can own your no. I have one, a coworker, a former boss that said to me, it's either a hell yes or it's a hell no. There's really no in between for some of these decisions. And so if you start to own that no, you can make room for the more aligned yes.
Absolutely. We're here on the 30-minute hour podcast. I know we've got quite a few people from the What Now movement that are watching us, and people from different places all over Facebook and the internet watching us. So again, please make sure you're typing into the chat. Say hello to us, throw your questions out here, so we could definitely get them answered for you. But Dawn, so you are frequently asked to talk on the topic of leadership. So talk about like what are some of the, we already know you talk about empathy. What are some of the specific aspects of leadership you speak on, and how did this become an area of focus for you?
I've been very blessed to have some really great leaders in my life, mentors that have shown me the way, that have helped me get to a destination faster because I was willing to listen to their lessons and not repeat them. I've had people believe in me before I believed in myself, and that allowed me to move forward faster. And so I wanted to give that gift back to others. And so I do a lot of mentorship, my opportunity to share my lessons, share my insight, invite them to look at something from a new perspective, help ease their mind and become that internal dialogue. Some of us have that, that internal dialogue that's negative. But when you surround yourself with people that have more positive messages, that your sphere of influence has more thoughtful and empowering things, you often quiet that voice and you can start to replace it with some of those leadership style mentor type conversations. And so I do a lot of mentorship and leadership for that reason. I also think it's very important that we distinguish management from leadership. And in the past, I've had people who have managed versus led. And I feel that the best leaders are the people that allow their people to shine, and they help bring out the best in the people that happen to technically work for them. I prefer to say they work with me and not for me. And I empower them to take on more and more as we grow together. But I do find that there is a difference between leadership and management. And so I often speak on the topic of authentic leadership, leading with empathy, enrolling people in a vision, inviting people to partner with you and grow alongside you. Even if you have a little bit more experience in certain areas, I promise you can learn from something from everyone that you meet. So the willingness to lead versus manage is an important distinction for me.
So Don, I want to give put a real scenario out there, and I'd like to see how you would go about this. Let's say you've just taken on a new position in an organization as a manager, leader, executive. Tell me about when you first start that job and you know that you have this team out there. I mean, what's your approach to kind of getting in and getting an understanding of the team, and just like kind of what are Don's top 5 things that you're gonna do?
Yeah, so it's important for me to understand how the role I am assuming is impact, like the work my team does. So I'm in sales, right? So how does the work of the sales team affect the client success team, affect the marketing team, affect the product team, as an example? And so my goal is to connect and get to know each person, a little bit of personal time connecting, but then I really want to understand, what do you need from my team to make your job easier? If you had an ideal scenario, what would that look like? And kind of understand where the opportunity is to improve communication, improve synergy, and to help lift each other up, because all of those departments are interconnected. And for any one of those departments to operate in a silo, we're not going to fully serve our clients to the best of our ability. So getting curious about, okay, where are we now? What pain points do you see, and how can I be of service to help move those forward? But then also, where's the desired destination? What does this ideal look like? So that I can start helping to bridge the gap. But I think it's important for people to feel heard, and to understand that I understand what their role is, and, you know, essentially what challenges they may be up against, and how I can alleviate those. And so I think those are kind of where I would spend the first, you know, couple weeks of my time, before I offer any solutions, offer any suggestions, offer any perspective on a new way, is just to truly understand, where are we now? And how does that affect the people that are currently here? And then, of course, slowly integrating those suggestions and ideas, and inviting people to look at things from another lens, perhaps, to bring us closer to a more ideal work environment.
No, that was a great approach, because I've had opportunities where I brought in leaders and into my organization, and then they just come in and immediately just start changing things. And, you know,
it's a real miss for people to, in my opinion, to do that, because oftentimes that you're changing something on the back of somebody else who just spent however long developing that.
Right.
So it might need some tweaks and changes, but it doesn't necessarily need to be tossed out, and you need to earn the right to have that conversation. And so through those earlier dialogue pieces, you start to earn the right with people to have some of the harder conversations.
Earn the right. I like that.
Exactly. And so you touched on something again. I want you to expound a little bit more. So from your perspective, Dawn, what do you see as the big differences? Because I'm not sure everybody really understands the big difference between management and leadership, if you had to describe it from your experience.
So everyone has been offered their position for a reason. They were qualified to fill a certain role, and hopefully to grow from that position. And when you come in and you manage, some people will view that as micromanagement. Some people will attach a meaning to it that is directly proportionate to perhaps what they think you think about them. And so coming in and telling someone how to do their job versus coming in and trying to extract the best out of them, empowering them to perhaps reflect and to make those necessary adjustments and pivots, while allowing them to still own it, allows you to bring out the best of that person, but also allows them to see themselves as a larger contributor. When you take away their ability to contribute, you're impacting their value, and then it makes them feel expendable. And my intention would never be to allow anyone to think we don't need them on the team, but perhaps we just need to kind of shape them a little bit and allow them to thrive and grow from where they are. And the only way you can do that is to get to know them well enough to understand what they're up against, right? So one of the things I talk about a lot in since the pandemic has began is, you know, different people are doing different things and having different challenges at home. You know, we're a military couple. I work remotely always. My biggest transition with the pandemic is my lack of travel, but I do not have any children. And I work from home normally. So I have the setup that I'm used to having. I have access to the things I'm used to having. And I didn't have to relearn how to do that part. But there are people that have small children. There are people that are navigating spouses that are also working at home. There are people that may have an elderly parent in their care at home. There are people that are navigating some other challenges, and perhaps even their own mental health is compromised in this moment because they don't have good self-care routines and they don't have a good system for recharging. And so when you compound all of that, that person may have had the office experience, which was also separating them from all these other things that are now under one roof. And so being aware of the challenges that other people face requires you to have enough of a relationship, but also the willingness to ask. And so just being mindful of even that piece of things for people, and having a compassion, and leading with that compassion, but being known as somebody who cares enough to ask, you know, kind of all comes full circle in how you choose to show up as a leader.
So it's interesting. I had this one kind of mentor that whenever he came in town and he'd always just spend time with all of our employees and just ask them how they're doing.
Mhm.
Like always, just and he was able to establish a relationship with each of those individuals that I could never. I'd be like, how did you get that information? And how do you know this about them?
Mhm.
It's because he just used to connect with them and they just loved him. He'd give them books, he'd, give them stuff, and he just, he knew everything about them. And, they'd run through a wall for him. Now he was a, former military leader.
Mhm.
So I'm sure that some of that was, was learned through the military, but he's definitely has done a good job of that in his post-military career.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer that you should be a leader that you would follow.
Mm.
So if your leadership style is not something that is admired by even you, if you don't look at if you wouldn't follow yourself, then there's something you have to work on, right? So self-leadership is equally important, mirroring and modeling that behavior. I would expect that there is someone that he has led or mentored that will follow that same path because it was so impactful to them.
That's a great point, being a leader that you would follow. Never thought of that. So if you're a leader that's jumping up and down and on a tirade and throwing stuff, you probably wouldn't want to be under someone like that yourself.
No.
Wow.
So really you have to decide how you want to show up in each moment. And you have to be willing to admit when you showed up poorly, when you didn't show the best version of yourself. You have to be willing to say, you know what, I didn't handle that really well. And this is what I'm going to do to change that behavior. But for now, I just want to extend an apology. I don't want to make an excuse. I want to extend an apology because I know I didn't show up my best. And that willingness to even be vulnerable in those moments is a sign of leadership.
Wow.
So Dawn, it's interesting because I think this is more important now, especially in a work environment, than ever. If you run a business and you lead people, because people have options, right? People can touch their phone and make a connection and go work somewhere else. It's so much easier now. And I hear people that they blame the millennials, right? They say, they don't want to work. You've got to coddle them. You've got to give them a trophy. It's the millennials' fault. I mean, what's your take as far as leadership as it relates to kind of this modern day workforce?
I think one of the beautiful things about this generation coming up, and whether you want to say millennials, Gen Z, whoever you want to point at, I'm in my early 40s. And so essentially everyone younger than me, as far as I'm concerned, is far more awake, as I would describe it. And what I mean by that is they're more in touch with being willing to say, this isn't for me, and I don't really have to do it because there are plenty of options for me. Yeah. I think the scarcity mindset from those of us that perhaps grew up with somebody who lived with lack, or, my grandmother lived through the Depression, right? And so then my parents were essentially raised by people who lived through the Depression. And so when you look at the mindset that comes from that, it's a scarcity mindset. Someone's going to steal my lunch, or I'm living paycheck to paycheck, or there isn't enough. So by shining the light on somebody else, I'm dimming my light. And that's not the case. And this younger generation is acutely aware of what they bring to the table. And so they're a little bit more connected. They're a little bit more thoughtful. They're a lot more passionate, and they have a desire to make a social impact. So when they come to work at an organization, they're looking for you to connect the dots. They're looking for you to show them why they're doing what they're doing. And frankly, if your mission and vision isn't tight enough, they're not going to stay. Because if you haven't enrolled them in your vision, they're going to go somewhere else. Because they can, and they believe that they can, and they're not afraid to go do it. You'll find this younger generation, they're not going to be somewhere 20, 25 years. They're going to be somewhere 3, maybe 4 years tops. And they're going to be like, all right, if you can't show me how I grow, I got to go. And that's just because they know there's more out there.
Yeah.
And so I think that they're more open and less afraid, if you will, in the career space. I'm not saying that they don't operate with some level of fear, but they push through it anyway. So courage is the ability to operate even in the presence of fear. So people that are courageous are not fearless. They just step forward anyway. They just push through it. Because what's on the other side is what they're looking for. They have the ability to envision that if I push through this now, what's on the other side of this is going to be even better. And I don't know that everyone has that ability to do that, depending on their upbringing and what's ingrained in them. And so you have to be willing to develop yourself out of that mindset.
Wow.
Yeah, that's great. You address like both sides of it. You know, you address the need for the leader to really understand that you really have to watch how you're setting the vision and communicating, but you also address the other person kind of knowing their value. And the people in the workforce today, they're not going to tolerate a bad boy. And you said how, you know, they'll stay for, I think, 3 years. Like the person will stay 3 years if they like you. But if they get in and they're not feeling the culture or they don't understand how they fit, it may be 3 months, 3 weeks, 3 days.
Yeah.
So no, good stuff.
And unapologetically, they will be out.
That's real.
For sure. So I'm going to bring up a controversial thing here that's out here. I'd love to hear your take.
Right.
We push the envelope on the 30-minute hour. So
Go ahead.
There's a thought out here that leaders are born with the gift, and you either have it or you don't. It's a genetic thing. What are your thoughts to that? What do you say to that?
I don't think leadership is for everyone. I will say that, but I believe that everyone is born with gifts. So if you're okay with me staying in that lane for a second, I'll explain what I mean by that.
Please do.
So I do believe that everyone is born with a gift that is given to them only. They were born with that gift, whether or not they're ready to unwrap it, that's up to them. So Bishop T.D. Jakes uses an analogy about an apple core, right? And you can eat the seeds, and the core of the apple is where your gift is. That's where your purpose and your blessing and your gift is. And you can either cut to the core or you can rot to the core. You have a choice. So if you cut to the core, you're willing to do the work to get to the core of what is your truth and what is your purpose and what the work that lights you up and what do you want to do that feels like you would do it for free because it's that meaningful to you in your lifetime to do that work. But some people don't get there because they're so afraid. So they're kind of slowly peel the skin off first, and you slowly take a bite, or you're kind of slowly doing it, right? But then life happens to you and something causes you to abruptly have to make a decision, literally like a life or death. And that could be a diagnosis, it could be a death, it can be an addiction. You hit rock bottom for some reason and you have no choice but up. So you get to this awakening for a different reason, you know? So I think everyone is born with this innate gift of that is their own. And when they find it, it illuminates from within them. And you will meet these people and you will know that they are in their zone of genius. They are in their gifts. But they have to be willing to weed out what is the belief that I've been given, the beliefs that have been circling me, the beliefs that have been spoken to me or about me, removing the labels and saying, this is my truth. And this is where I believe my zone of genius is. And this is where I want to operate from. And so I think that everyone is born with that gift that is their own, but they have to be willing to do the work, the inner work to get there. But I don't think leadership necessarily is everyone's zone of genius, is everyone's gift. So that's why I kind of reframed that a little bit for you. Hope you don't mind.
Okay. But what simple steps do you see? What steps can someone take to say, you know what, I'm in a leadership position. You know, what can I do to become a better leader? What simple steps can someone take?
So I do think I'm very grounded in self-development. I do focus a lot about the messages I take in. I personally don't watch a lot of the news. I choose to use my personal time for podcasts and audiobooks and self-development. I choose to be very specific about what information I take in. So kind of what that inner dialogue is, what that noise is. And I try to weed out things that don't serve my highest self. So if my goal is to continue to up level, I am very mindful of my zone of proximity. I surround myself with people that are also seeking to grow and thrive, so that you are the sum of the 5 people you spend your time with.
Mm.
And so I want to make sure that I'm always being challenged. I don't want to surround myself with people that think I'm right all the time. I want to surround myself with people that challenge me to think differently. I want to surround myself with a diverse group of people that come from different walks of life, so that I can have perspective and I can have an awareness that not everyone's life is the same as mine. And there's some beauty in all of the differences. And I want to feel like I have this opportunity to go to 3 to 5 different people if I have a question and I'm seeking some perspective, versus just seeking the person that's going to validate my perspective. And so I think that if you are looking to grow as a leader, if you're looking to grow your network, they come hand in hand. But I also think that there's work that you have to do independently and then collectively for that growth to happen.
Great. Excellent. So Dawn, you're one of these people that we question if you sleep. You're just doing so many things.
Me too.
You got it going on. You got a lot going on. So in addition to being a speaker and you're a professional in the field of education, you're also an author. You've collaborated on a couple of book projects. Tell us about the books that you've been involved in.
So my first book was a contribution to an anthology. It's called You Don't Know Our Stories, From Trials to Triumph. It was put together by Michelle Hauser, and it was essentially a compilation of women sharing stories of overcoming. And so in that book, I chose to share a chapter called Shifting My Identity. And it was about, the evolution of me becoming the person that I am today. It has to do with my journey briefly through childhood and just the idea of this perfectionist that I was starting to cultivate. And then I was an athlete and I labeled myself as being the best at this or the top performer here. And I was always striving for this recognition and this hustling for my worthiness, Brene Brown would say. And I was always tying my validity to a thing, to an achievement of some sort. And then I went through a couple of bad relationships where that analogy I made earlier was because that happened in my life. And I learned the power of sharing my story, but I also learned that the work had to start with me. So I had this awareness that happiness was an inside job. And when I started to do the inner work and realize that when you show up to life and every experience that you have, knowing what you bring to the table, knowing who you are and how you deserve to be treated, you start to attract the higher quality relationships, friendships, job opportunities, because you're not settling for less. And so my first contribution was about that. And when we did the book signings and we did a book tour, we stood in North Carolina at a restaurant and did a beautiful panel discussion. And we spoke into a group of about 40 individuals. And I learned in that moment the power of me speaking my truth was also going to move other people. And I had this awareness after that I needed to help more people have that opportunity. And so my second book was a book compilation I put together where I invited other people to contribute their personal stories to my book. That book is called The Strength of Our Anchors. And it was designed for the same purpose, but to elevate the voices and stories of others so that they could be the gifts and the playbook for another person who might be struggling or moving through something right now, and they can't see to the other side. They can't see the forest through the trees. Kim LaMontagne, who you had on on the What Now movement today at noon, she shared her story in that book. And I had, other contributing authors that shared postpartum depression or a cancer story, or moving, coming to the US as a first generation American and surviving that transition and what that felt like. So a lot of different types of stories, but all coming together with the same purpose, is by being vulnerable and willing to share our stories, we give others permission to do the same. And so those were the two projects and kind of how they both came together.
Wow. Don, I'm gonna ask you a question I'd like to just really get your take on. So with everything that's going on now with the, with the protests and all of that, and you as a leader. So if you had some employees that were, kind of expressing their feelings about the protest and all of that, and like how would you deal with that situation as a leader in that organization? Because it can't be like the elephant in the room. Like everybody's talking about it. It's on television. I mean, so how would you deal with your staff on diverse staff on that topic?
Yeah, I think it's important first to acknowledge that everybody's moving through the experience differently. And I can't personally be completely in the shoes of another individual. So I don't have, as I said, I don't have children, but I'll use an example. If a Black female who also has a Black son is sharing her experience with me, that is not something that I can ever truly experience. But my ability to use empathic accuracy, my ability to allow her to share her feelings and her truth with me, I can't fix that, but I can sit in it. I can listen, and I can be there to just truly hold space and say, that must be horrible. Like that must be scary. You must feel so uncertain in this moment. Like just mirror back what I'm hearing and understanding in such a way that I also have an acute awareness that I can't change that for her in this moment. But what I can do is I can say what I'm willing to do to educate myself and re-educate myself. I can let her know perhaps what we're capable of doing as a company, as a people, as a group, as a collective to come together. That is my effort and my ability in that moment. Because I can't change that experience for someone, but I can certainly learn, listen, and thank them for their willingness to share that with me. But it's a challenging position to be in, especially, when there's going to be different moments and different times. I mean, people, even just their upbringing, or where they're from, or what their life experience is, or what their current experience is, it's all different. And so I just invite people to be willing to listen. Don't avoid the conversation because it's uncomfortable. And educate yourself. Be willing to do the work. One of the things that I think is a miss on certain people's parts, and not, in my offices specifically, but just in general, I've heard a lot of people that miss the mark for a couple reasons. They miss the mark because they don't say anything. They miss the mark because they put it on the Black community to teach those of us of the white community to educate me. And I don't think that that's fair either. My personal opinion is my responsibility to educate myself. My education based on my life experience, and there could be a Black male in my company or in my office or at someone else's business who just had a different upbringing also because of the community he grew up in versus the community of another Black male. So there's nothing to say that two Black men had the same life experience either. And making that judgment or assumption is a miss on that as someone's part as well. And so I would invite everyone to be open-minded and invite them to learn, to educate themselves, and to be proactive about how to educate themselves. And I've taken the time, and I continue to take the time to seek resources that can help me to better understand what I can do in this moment from the place that I am. I believe we all have an opportunity to do what we can from where we are with what we have. And that's going to be different for everybody. But doing nothing is not an option. And so I would love for the people that know me to know that I stand firmly in that belief. And as a leader, I think that that's important for people to understand.
Thank you for that.
No, that's great. I think it goes back to the whole leading with empathy and listening to understand, and not necessarily listening to cast judgment. Being able to listen to ideas that are different than yours may be. So Dawn, what's next on the horizon for you?
Oh, there's always so many things. So I'm super excited about what you guys are creating with the What Now movement. I would love to, to dive in and see what else I can do to help move things along. I think it's very timely. I think there's a lot of work to be done. I intend to, continue to lock arms with people in my network to help elevate the conversation and see what's possible when everybody just pours into one another and helps support each other's initiatives. I would love to create some more content that would be valuable to help support entrepreneurs and those that are having to pivot and shift in this moment, continuing to find unique and creative ways to lead. And, there may be another book in the future. You never know. I could probably get talked into that.
I know someone who could possibly talk you into that too.
I do. I know her too. Gosh, she's good at that, right?
That's right. She's watching us right now, and she's posting in the on the chat. Dr. Sharon H. Porter, the great Dr. Sharon, is watching us right now. Shout out to you. All right. So how can our followers best connect with you?
Yeah, so I'm on most social media platforms. I have not braved TikTok, but LinkedIn is Dawn Marie Bornheimer. So is Facebook. Instagram is Dawn Inspires 44, I believe. And I have a website, dawninspires.com. And my books are available there. My speaking engagement information is available there. And certainly join us in the What Now movement. We're going to be continuing to up the engagement, up the value, up the content. And we're looking for passionate and empowered leaders that are willing to help elevate the greater community. We're looking for people that are interested in contribution and elevating the voices of the collective. So if that feels natural and feels good for you, we would love to see you there, and certainly reach out. I'm happy to do consulting calls, conversations, leadership, anything that is helpful to the greater efforts of uplifting people is exactly where I want to be.
All right. Fantastic. Well, Ted, this has been an amazing show, and so we're at the part now where we're gonna go around the horn.
Wait. Let me say this, Eric. Let me say this. So usually, we do this whole thing, and like the guests, they speak, and then I'm kind of left to kind of follow the guests. And normally I kind of can work my way through. I'm totally nervous, right, of what you're gonna say, because you've been like dropping the mic, picking it up, dropping it, picking it up all day. So, I've been making all kind of notes to try to prepare for this. So please take it easy on me, because I already know this is going to be a tough act to follow. I want to work for you, right? Like you got me so pumped up. I'm ready to come work for you. But then,
when do I start?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So go ahead, Dawn. What's your thought to leave with the people?
My parting thoughts, what I would leave with everyone tonight.
Yes.
I think that the key for me, and the thing I hope you leave this conversation with, is that every day is an opportunity for you to make a different decision. We're all one decision away from a completely different life. And if I were to look at my life 10 years ago, I would not have been able to imagine where I am today. And it's because I never limited myself to the possibility of tomorrow. I just simply made the next right decision. And so as you continue to look at improving your sphere of influence, as you start to build your network, as you start to build connections, don't focus so far out. Just focus in on what you can do today. Focus on what you can accomplish today, and those habits that you build and that consistency that you build will create a better tomorrow. And so I just encourage you to think about who you want to be every day when you wake up. Ask the questions and allow life to reveal the answers.
All right.
Wow.
Well, Ted.
Yeah. So I can say that, some people, they kind of, you meet some people and they really impact your life and just the information that they share. And I have to honestly say, and I'm not just saying this because you're in the box, one of the 3 boxes, but I mean, you said so much stuff today that as a person that has been a leader for probably over 20 plus years, that there's so many things that I've just had to just rethink about just today. Like when you made the statement about, wanting to be the leader that you would follow, right? So, I mean, it's making me really do some introspection and really look at myself and say, I really want to follow Ted, and then, and you said, earning the right to have those hard conversations with someone, right? Like, that again, because at some point you have to have hard conversations with employees and, just, it seems like it would be much easier to do that if you've earned the right that that you kind of put that investment in with that person, so that when you have that conversation, you can get you're able to get the most out of it. And so it's just, so many things that, that you've said in this conversation that I'm sure has helped a lot of our listeners, whether they're leaders now or will be leaders or managers in the future. And I mean, it's definitely, I think this has probably been the most notes that I've ever taken. And, the good thing about being on this show is, I mean, we get free consultant services, right? We get to listen and hear some of these things that, that we can really use to make ourselves better in our everyday lives and our profession. So thank you for everything that you've shared today, and looking forward to working with you in the What Now movement.
Yeah, thank you. I just say, to add to what you just said, we often teach what we need.
Nuggets are still dropping, Eric. She's raining nuggets, Eric. So
She's raining the nuggets.
That's it.
Now, Don, it's been an honor to have you on the show. And so for me, I read this other study where they survey like this group of executives and asked them to rate their leadership ability. And like 70% of them said that they were in the top 10% when it came to leadership.
They're too afraid to admit less than that.
Right. So the math doesn't add up, but I think it's easy to have a blind spot. And sometimes, especially if you've been successful doing things a certain way, you think you're a good leader, and that may not be the case. So I think your conversation, Dawn, has should have heightened everyone's awareness to how we lead and the importance of leading the right way, and really looking in the mirror at the end of the day. And I thought, like Ted said, I thought that was a profound question. Would I follow myself?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer may be no. And I can tell you, for me, for years, the answer would be no. when I was starting out in leadership and we were getting results, we were winning awards. But if I were to ask myself that question early in my career, the answer would probably be no.
Yeah.
I think it's profound. But again, at the end of the day, we just need to have a heightened sense of awareness of how we're leading and how we're showing up. And I think
the beautiful thing is we get to choose every day.
Yes.
So if you're not proud of how you showed up yesterday, you have a choice to show up differently tomorrow. And people might look at you a little bit funny if that's the first time you showed up that way, but you'll get it. If you're willing to be vulnerable enough to say to them, you know what? I had a conversation last night that really shifted my perspective. And today I want to start by doing X, Y, and Z. And I really need your feedback. I need your help, because if I'm truly leading a servant leader, I want to lead the way that works for you so we can collectively move forward together. And so invite them into your transformation. Yes. If you invite them into the transformation, then they're going to help you through the rocky parts. And then they'll also tell you when you really have shown up for them, and getting that feedback is valuable.
So Don, question, you've mentioned a couple times on the show that you were an athlete. Like, what'd you play?
I played basketball, softball, and soccer through school, like in the earlier years. And then when I was going to college, I had originally started out and playing soccer. So then I played club sports, and I kind of just stuck with it because I really like the team aspect of sports. I love just the ability to compete a little bit, but I also just love the camaraderie that comes from the team atmosphere. It just certainly felt like natural even through grad school and everything. I just love being a part of a team and the opportunity to encourage and empower and, support other people. But yeah, I played sports all through growing up.
You seem like you just would have been a great teammate. We could be losing by about 40 points. You'd be like, come on, we can do it. We can come on, turn this around. We could be down by 50, No, that's great.
Yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. I think there's a lot of things that you can learn about yourself and about leadership through sport. I think there's a lot of lessons that cross over. Some of the, athletes do a really great job of that, bringing that to the workplace. So oftentimes you'll find on some of the top performers in an organization are often athletes.
Yes, they understand that team dynamic.
They understand that what they do or don't do impacts the collective group.
Yes. Very good.
And then, yes, the encouragement doesn't hurt.
That's right. That's right.
All right. Well, that is our show for today. And Dawn, one more time, can you give everybody the information on your books and how they can connect with you? I just want to make sure we close with that so everybody's clear on how to connect with you.
Yeah, so Dawn Marie Bornheimer on both Facebook and LinkedIn. And then my books are available on my website at dawninspires.com. They're also available on Amazon. And I am looking to create a compatible journal to go along with the Strength of Our Anchors, because I've gotten a lot of really great feedback about the reflection that happens from reading those stories. So I talked to Dr. Sharon about helping me perhaps publish a compatible journal this summer. For those that have a copy of the book, then they would have the option of adding the journal as well.
Excellent. Great. Well, again, that's our show for today. It's Not Your Everyday Podcast. Don't forget to check us out. www.the30minutehour.net is the website. Make sure you go to the 30 Minute Hour Facebook page, hit the like button so you get an automatic notification. Make sure you're following us so you know when we have a new episode. Until next time, have a great one.